Experience Karen Hunter
in a completely different way.
Karen Hunter is awesome. The podcast.
If you like me on SiriusXM Urban View Channel 126, you're gonna love me. And Karen Hunter is awesome. Hey, this is Karen Hunter, host of the Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM's Urban View. Karen Hunter is awesome is an actual podcast to bring heat and energy and knowledge and power. A 1-2 punch that I don't think you get anyplace else. Tell the truth. So check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You will not be disappointed.
My grandmother, a warrior of the civil rights movement. She called me at some point during the last Trump administration, her stomach in knots, her voice cracking, and she said to me, "Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry because I thought our generation had fixed some of this stuff." I said to her what I say to you tonight. It's just our turn. In this moment, when young people like me are asking whether or not we're going to inherit a world where we can drink the water and breathe the air, this is a moment of us to choose. This moment where seniors are asking, can they retire in the house that they raised their kids? This is a moment of us to choose. Now, there are folks who have written their obituaries of the Democratic Party. But I didn't come all the way to National Harbor for a funeral. I came for a revival.
Okay. All right. That is the voice of someone who should have been a senator, but he is now vice chair of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. Let me welcome to the show the amazing, the wonderful Philadelphia's own Malcolm Kenyatta. Hey.
Thank you so much.
Let that rock. Let that rock. Thank you. I was inspired by what you said. I'm still I got a side eye on the DNC. I'm not quite sure. I feel a lot of us are so fatigued and we have done the most, and leadership has been sorely missing in terms of the fight. Yep. But you showed some fight. So I said, let's come. Let me open the doors. I had banned Jamie Harrison at some point, and then I invited him back, and then he wouldn't come because he's petty too. So we can both be petty. But I'm like, it's a new day, and we're going to need all hands on deck. So talk to me a little bit, Malcolm, about the vision that you have.
Well, first of all, let me say, and I said I was going to say on this side of the conversation, what an incredible open, and you said that, there's some stuff that's just the facts, and the facts is that the Philadelphia Eagles went to New Orleans and just spanked some ass and came out with a Super Bowl, and so we're really excited about that. But more substantively to what we're talking about here, this is a moment, as I said in those remarks to the assembled press and DNC members, a moment of us to choose. What are we going to do? And in this moment, you have some people who have decided that, this guy narrowly won an election, didn't get a majority of the popular vote, but narrowly won the election. And they, have said to folks implicitly and explicitly that we ought to get with his program. We ought to lay down. We ought to roll over. We ought to kiss the ring. I refuse to do any of those things, in part informed by our history. I know the history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And in this moment, I think we need to be inspired by our foremothers and forefathers that showed us a path of how to deal with bullies and folks who want to concentrate all of their power, with one individual. And I think that one of the things we have to do in this moment, before we can talk about some of the electoral strategy, and we can have that conversation, I know we will, is we have to get out of this cycle of stinking thinking. And what I mean by that is this. Yes, Democrats lost a narrow election. That's a fact. But the fact is that the way we've discussed this election and the way that we've used it to talk about our future has been counterproductive to the work that we need to do. And here's a prime example of how bad it's been. There was a YouGov poll that I read, Karen, a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that showed that incorrectly, 46% of Americans believe that Joe Biden's popular vote margin was smaller than Donald Trump's. Donald Trump had one of the smallest popular vote margins in history and had one of the, lowest underperformances in terms of somebody who's won in terms of the popular vote. And so why does that matter? It matters because we cannot allow this guy to walk around as if he has some mandate to remake this country in his image and walk around believing that a majority of the American people support this. A majority of the American people do not support this. A majority of the American people fall somewhere in the bucket of what you just indicated when you introduced me. That Democrats are believers in fighting for working people and working family, but there are a lot of people who don't believe us when we say it. And that's the job that we have, and that's the work that I'm excited to do.
So what does that look like? Because it's an uphill battle at this point. I feel like, to your point, the goal in this election for MAGA, not Republicans, because I don't even know what a Republican is now, was to, whether it's the Steve Bannon playbook or the Charlie Kirk playbook or the Stephen Miller playbook or the Elon Musk playbook, was to completely flood the airwaves with mis and disinformation.
Yep.
Division, chaos, ridiculousness, theater, and get people so disenfranchised. Gaza was in the center. Gaza. No one's talking about Gaza. It literally will be turned into rubble now, and they literally are going to cleanse that area of Palestinians. And the protests that were out and all of the, I'm not voting and all of this, I don't hear too much except at Kendrick's Super Bowl halftime. Somebody came out with a flag, and I've seen an interview with that brother. But it's interesting to me, Malcolm, that the apathy, and I get it. There's a level of fatigue, and I don't know. Let me just be 100 with you. I don't know who the head of the DNC is. I don't know that man. I know you. Been watching you. You're vice chair. So what's the action plan?
So a couple of things, and I would pick up where I left off, that people are in line with democratic values, but we have to make sure that people connect those values, those policies to us. One of the challenges in the last election is that President Biden did so many things that folks, are going to look back on, frankly, and see the benefits of and continue to see the benefits of, whether it's $35 for insulin, whether it was the investments he made to put us in a position where we can get rid of every lead pipe, not just in Flint, but all across this country, whether it was appointing more Black people to the bench than every other administration combined, with obviously the pinnacle of that being Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, the issue is this, that we have to go out and tell that story. One of the things that we're doing that's very practical is we just started putting on all the Democratic social media channels, on platforms. It's also on all of my platforms. You're going to see it Monday through Friday. What have the Democrats done today? Very simple thing, but very important thing, to make sure that people are able to, in a very quick way, see a couple of things that are being done to push back against this extremism. What we have seen for the last, however many days this guy has been in office is a reverse Robin Hood. We are told to believe that the wealthiest man in the world is dismantling things like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which returned millions of dollars back to people who were scammed. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which stopped people from getting overdraft fees. And you just think about that, for example, the overdraft fees. Let me just tarry here for a second. People were being charged for not having money. We were charging people for being poor, further creating a cycle of poverty. Democrats was signed by President Obama, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, to go after those types of scams in ways that people were seeing dollars ripped away from them by big, greedy special interests. Democrats did that. Now, the wealthiest man in the world has come into that agency and is trying to gut it and is trying to tell us that he's found fraud. And the agency, the only fraud that he found was himself when he walked into the damn building. Now, what we have to do is continue to talk to people about what Democrats are doing to respond in this moment. I can give you a whole list, but I want people to go to at the Democrats and look at the list of the things that we're putting out that we're doing. The second thing that we have to do is make sure, you talked about history. You talked about memory. We need to talk about what these agencies do because so many people, yeah, they might have recognized that their bank is no longer charging them a fee, but they're not connecting it to this agency that was stood up by Democrats. And that education, Dr. Hunter, is key, because in this moment, when we do rebuild from the nonsense and the destruction that we're going to see out of this administration, we're going to have to know what is worth rebuilding. We're going to have to understand, what did they tear down that made a difference for working people, and what we ought to be in the business of making sure we can try to preserve and try to build back up. And the final thing we have to do is get local. We did not get here overnight. We didn't get here because this guy won one election. We got here because Democrats have for far too long, in my view, only focused on what's happening in DC at the expense of everything else. And I'll give you these three examples. If you want to talk about congressional maps being gerrymandered, which I know you have on the show many times, if you want to talk about taking away the right to vote, that's not happening in DC. That's happening in your state capital where you live. We're talking about banning books and not being able to tell our history. That's not happening in DC. That's happening at the school board meeting that you missed. And if we want to talk about building housing and dealing with the crisis of affordability in that space, that is connected to the zoning policies that's happening in the city hall or in the county building where you live. And so as a Democratic Party, under the leadership of our new chair and with my leadership and many others, we are going to be pushing people to look local. We can't boil the ocean, but there is something that everybody can do right where they live. And I think that's a huge part of the strategy moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way I start just about every show, because this learned helplessness, or this feeling that, what can I do? It feels very daunting where we are right now. And for a lot of folks, It's just easier to escape. It's easier to do nothing. It's easier to yell and scream and complain. But that work, just a little bit, you can do a little bit. Everybody can do just a little. So no one has to do a lot. Malcolm Kenyatta is here. He is the vice chair of the DNC. And I'm going to be, using all of the tools for us to win. And by win, I mean live, breathe, move about the cabin, unobstructed by insanity. And it's tough. It's tough. So I thank you for rolling up your sleeves. You're 35 years old. This is a
34. Don't age me yet.
When's your birthday? Your birthday's in June. You
in July.
July. Okay, you done crossed into 2025, sir. You're 35. Own it, embrace it. It's a beautiful age. And before we get to other political stuff, you look amazing too. Let me just say,
thank you.
I don't know what you've been doing, but or tell us what you've been doing, because talking about your grandmother, I know you also lost your parents at a young age. I think your mother passed. She was younger than I am right now.
Yep.
And so I feel that. For you, what have you been doing to look so great?
I appreciate. Well, listen, I appreciate you mentioning that. And frankly, this is not disconnected from the political conversation we're having. I talked about look local, but also when somebody tells you their playbook, you have to do everything you can. You mentioned Coach Staley. If her opposing team said, these are the plays we're going to run, then she's going to actually look into what the plays she has and try to do something opposite. The guy who wrote Project 2025 is now the head of Trump's Office of Management and Budget, one of the most important unknown offices in all of the federal government, because it dictates staffing and how we spend the money that is appropriated by Congress. He was caught in a video saying that what he wants to do to the federal workforce and to the American people more broadly is to terrorize them. He wants to terrorize the federal workforce, because what happens when people are afraid, they either fight or they freeze. And a lot of people don't fall into, one of those buckets the entire time, but we all find ourselves in a moment where we can freeze and feel like we're hopeless. If they are telling you that they want to make you terrified, that they want to make you so overwhelmed that you can't fight back, a part of what you have to do is respond to that by taking care of yourself. And I keep saying this everywhere I go, that is not separate and removed from this work that we need to do. Getting something to eat in the morning when you wake up, drinking water, staying hydrated, moving. And I don't just mean the gym, but whatever that looks like to you, getting some movement in your day, that has to be part and parcel with our strategy, because that makes sure we have the clear minds, the clear eyes, the clear heart to do the work that we need to do in this moment. They want to terrorize us to move into a freeze or flight moment. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can actually fight the ridiculousness and the reverse Robin Hood nonsense that we've seen come out of this administration. And so that has been a priority for me. Drinking my water, going to the gym, 5, 6 days a week, looking at everything that I eat, and making sure that I'm taking care of myself.
But what inspired that? Malcolm, everybody who carries
Yeah.
weight, including me, we know all of the things we're supposed to do.
Yep.
There's nothing new under the sun. It's calories in, calories out, move your body, drink your water,
Yep.
eliminate sugar, we know what to do. But we're not doing it, not because we're lazy and not because we're stupid and not because of any other reason. That food is addictive, first of all, and it's the one addiction that you can't avoid, unlike alcohol. You have to eat every day. So you're going to eat, and sometimes the stress also, provides comfort. The food provides comfort. So in many ways, the food is a drug. What was the thing that changed and shifted for you? Because again, you look really like you've bought in.
You know what? It's the same thing I led with when I was talking about the Democratic Party and how we talk about ourselves. Somebody said this to me once, and I wish I could credit them because it did change my life, Dr. Hunter. Somebody said to me, if being hard on yourself worked, it would have already worked. And what I did in this moment, because so many of us have yo-yo dieted and the whole thing, was I stopped being mean to myself. We all live with that voice. It's easier to talk about the external haters that you have. I see all the posts about my haters and all that. But the biggest hater is the one you can't avoid and get away from. It's that little voice that lives in your head that tells you you are not enough of this, you're not enough of that, you never will, you can't. And that voice is one that can become so predominant, so all-consuming that you're never in a position to do the things that we all know we need to do. Because if you slip one day, if you fail, you have that voice saying, see, I told you. Yep, I knew you couldn't. And so I tried something different this time. I didn't walk into this stage in my journey with any, hard and fast rules about anything. Like I stopped drinking. I didn't have a drinking problem. I literally stopped by an accident. I said to myself, Malcolm, if you really want to drink, you can have one. And I found out I actually just wanted something, sweet to drink in a nice glass every now and then. I didn't actually want the hangover the next day or whatever the case may be. I said to myself, I want to eat a burger, I'll have a burger, but I try to have the nicest burger that I can have, not just go to McDonald's and eat, mindlessly. And so, for me, it is that constant reminder, and it's not like a pinnacle that you reach. It is a constant journey to say to myself, you know what? I am enough. I am not defined by anything that's on a scale at any given time. And just that kindness, it's crazy how it works. That kindness changed everything for me.
Wow. Okay. I'll think about trying kindness. And I'm not a doctor. I don't even try to play one on the radio. The amount of study that it takes to get a PhD, I have not done that work, so I don't deserve
I'm speaking this into your future, Dr. Hunter.
Okay, no, I will never do that. This is not on my to-do list. I don't aspire to it. But Malcolm Kenyatta is here. I'm still struggling though with the and this is going to be show and prove for the DNC because I feel like they, as an organization, as a committee, has a lot of work to do. I like that there are 3 vice chairs, because there's strength in numbers and each of you have your own thing. You brought David Hogue, a young man who was survived the mass shooting in Florida. You have Raina Walters Morgan, who's also coming in, powerhouse, as you were telling me more about her during the break. This is good. At the top of the ticket, as I said, I don't know the head of the DNC, and that's fine. I don't need to know Ken Martin. I know you, but I need to know what we can do to press. Like, are y'all going to listen this time? Because I feel like there was like a no, we got this, and you didn't have it. Like, there was so many missteps in the last, aside from the disinformation campaign. Yeah. Now we know what we're up against. What can we do to make sure that we don't end up back here in 2 years? Because now's the time for the midterm. Now's the time for a full court press. And then 4 years.
So I'm going to say something that I've said since the first time I ever stood for election. And my chief of staff would say, Malcolm, you cannot say this. And I said, I'm going to say it anyway because it's true. We do ourselves a disservice when we look at any leader and we get trapped in their cult of personality. And sometimes, I hear people, who want a cathartic viral video from their favorite, politician. And I've had a viral video and I appreciate people who shared it, before. But the reality is leadership is about recognizing that you can't do anything by yourself. And good leaders help everybody to see the leadership capacity that they have within themselves. The Democratic Party is not the 8 executive board members. We are not the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party are the people who are listening to this call. And there might be people who aren't registered to vote who are going to get registered to vote and become Democrats. You are the Democratic Party. Now, leaders do, as you said so correctly, have a responsibility to listen, have a responsibility to listen to the people who are on the ground, who are giving us their time, their talent, their best ideas. And I think we do. We want to hear those ideas. We want to make sure we're incorporating those ideas into everything that we're doing. And in running for this role, I went across this country to Detroit, to South Carolina. We had virtual forums as well with people from every region of the country. And a part of what I heard is a part of what I'm communicating back to you, that Democrats have not done a great job of telling people what we did. And you saw that in poll after poll after poll. The Democrats would do something, nobody had ever heard about it. That is something we have to change. That's why we're doing the What Have Democrats Done Today posts, so we can very simply make sure we're getting out that message. The second thing I heard from people is that Democrats don't invest in down ballot races. We are in a situation right now where she may have been on your show before. If not, I'm sure she would love to come on. But we have a Black woman named Joanna McClinton, who is my colleague, an incredible Speaker of the House. We flipped the Pennsylvania House of Representatives by 1 vote. Hear me, by 1 vote. And so because of that, we have been able to invest over $1 billion in education, something Republicans never wanted to do, because we have a woman sitting on the dais named Joanna McClinton. We have ignored, in many instances, those races. And her victory allowed us to ungerrymander the maps at the federal level and at the state level. And so people said, Malcolm, we have to give a damn about what's happening locally. And you have a Democratic Party led by Ken Martin, who was not long time, but he was the party chair in Minnesota. And when he came in, Minnesota Democrats were in a tough spot. When he took over, he won 25 out of 0, 25 statewide elections. He has lost 0 since he was chair of the Minnesota Democrats, which is a huge deal in a state that used to be very, very purple. He's 25-0 in that state. And then the last thing, Karen, I'll say is this, is that we need to reinvigorate our local Democratic, committees. The DNC is nothing but an umbrella organization of all the local committees that exist. And so people should go to Democrats.org, join your local party. If you say, hey, my local party doesn't do anything, well, we need that voice. We need that energy in the local party. We can't do this by ourselves. There are no supermen, no superwomen, but what we do have are people who have some very serious skill sets that they want to bring to bear, but also people who recognize that you lead from the bottom up. The more people who recognize their power and don't give it away, the more strengthened we'll be as an organization.
Powerful. And you're so right. I always say, be the change you want to see. Don't complain about it. Get involved. Did you use the word inure? Did you use that word?
Which word?
INURE. Because I thought I heard you say that in reference to, I think, what you were codifying into law there in Pennsylvania.
No.
Okay, all right, because that's the word of the day. All right, never mind. I was like, what in the alignment is happening here? All right, there's some races.
Now I wish I had. Now I just want to say inure just to make sure I'm aligned with the word of the day.
It has two meanings. One connected to law, another, which I'll talk about later on the show. Malcolm Kenyatta is here. There are a couple of seats up. We got to flip the House for sure. Yes. All of those House seats are, in play. And
we have some special elections right now. We have 2 special elections in Florida. Florida's first, Florida's third. And I want to say, I'm forgetting the seat number in New York, but it was Elise Stefanik. Her seat, she's going to be Unfortunately for all of us, the ambassador to the UN. But we have 3 special elections. Those are going to all be tough elections. They're all Republican, seats. But we just had a special election last week or the week before last in Iowa. Donald Trump won that district on election day by 21 points. In a special election, a Democrat came in and won that seat by 7 points, so a 28-point swing in just 3 weeks. On the job. And then we also have a special election here in Pennsylvania. You heard me mention that we control the House of Representatives by 1 seat, by 1 vote. And tragically, after the election, my colleague, Matt Gergely, who's salt of the earth guy out of McKeesport, which is right outside of Pittsburgh, he tragically passed. And so there's going to be a special election there, and you're going to have the DNC, focused in on that race and talking about the significance of that race. Not something you really saw, in previous years of us focusing on, a state house race, here in an election, in a non-election year, us really focusing in on these special elections. But we understand, as I said, this local work is not separate from the threat of Donald Trump. It is deeply connected. I remember doing Michael Steele's podcast many years ago, Karen, and he talked about when he became chair of the RNC, forget how much money they invested, but he wanted to flip 5 state chambers because he thought that was important to do things around voting rights and abortion access and all these different things. And he said at the time, Republican donors, were cussing him out like, you'll never be chair again. You what an idiot. They ended up flipping more than 5 state chambers. They flipped like 25 state chambers. We have been paying for it every single day. We've been paying for it in terms of restricting the right to vote, kicking people off of the rolls. We've been paying for it in terms of gerrymandering the maps, that no matter how hard Democrats fight, no matter how much you vote, the politicians get to pick their voters. The voters don't get to pick the politicians. We've been paying for it in terms of these regressive, laws on the books that are locking people up for no reason, throwing them in for-profit state prison. So we're in a position where the work that you do where you live is about stopping what's happening in DC, but we can't do it in the reverse. We can't think that everything that's happening in DC is going to change what's happening in your life. But what's happening in your life, in your neighborhood, in your community can impact the other way. And that's the shift that we have to have in our mindset.
Okay. So Elise Stefanik is the District 21, 21st District in New York. Florida, you said it's the 1st district?
Yeah, it's the Matt Gaetz seat is one of them.
Okay.
And Lord knows we'd like to get that seat.
But I mean, you're saying something. We don't tend to show up for midterms. We don't tend to show up for special elections. But if we over-index in showing up, Florida has always been in play. People forget how close that race was with Andrew Gillum versus the guy that wears the white boots. That was a very close race. It should have come down. They should have, in the ballot that year too, they wanted to restore voting rights to the formerly incarcerated, a former felon, and it won on the ballot. Now the new governor put in a poll tax and because people want power, so they want to stay in power by any means necessary. But Florida's in play. I feel New York, and that's
a perfect example, of what I'm saying. Had we been in a position where voting rights were restored, had we been in a position where a lot of the other things that voters, said they wanted, been done. For example, they changed the threshold for public ballot referendums to a supermajority. It used to be 50+1. They changed it to 60%, and you saw codifying abortion rights get 57% or 58% or whatever it was. And so, yes, Roe versus Wade being overturned was a disaster for women all across this country, and also, for men that want to be a part of family planning and decide whether and when to start a family. But we have to recognize that the voices of the people were silenced in large part by what is happening where you live, not just what's happening in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And that is what Trump does really well. Have you looking over here while he picks your pocket? And that's what we've seen. They want you looking at everything else. Oh, well, Trump is not going to celebrate Black History Month. I don't need Donald Trump for me to celebrate Black History Month.
Period.
We didn't want him to celebrate Black History Month. To be honest, he's not going to do it right. I'm going to celebrate Black History Month no matter what the hell he signs at his desk. So, I'm not getting distracted with that nonsense and that noise. What I care about is that this guy illegally stopped payments to Head Start. And now people don't know if they can drop off their kids to the daycare. What I care about is them threatening Medicare and Social Security. And if that doesn't get you to register to vote and get everybody you know to register to vote, if that doesn't get you to join your local Democratic Party, if that doesn't get you to vote in these special elections, then we have to continue to do the work to get people to wake up and understand what is happening in this moment. All of the nonsense that he wants to talk about, the kids that he wants to bully, the things that he signs at his desk, most of it means nothing. What does matter is what he's allowing this billionaire to do, and what he's trying to do illegally with stopping money that has already been appropriated by Congress to support working people and working families. That's what we have to focus on. Coach Sirianni said something to the Eagles team that he says all the time. Keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is this: Democrats are about lowering your prices, keeping workers from being treated like garbage. Republicans want to raise your prices so that they can cut taxes for millionaires and billionaires. That's the only thing that's at stake right now. Everything else is noise.
And on that note, I want to invite you back regularly.
Anytime.
Like at least we can talk. And I'm going to ask you questions. We're going to put our foot on the gas for the Florida special election as well as the one in New York. Super important that we flip some of these seats, and then the midterms after that. But also, yeah, this is a great audience, and they live just about everywhere. So you can get some
Karen
real
Hunter,
insight.
I was in South Carolina, and somebody said, I learned about you from the Karen Hunter show. And so, I'll be back. People are listening. People are engaged. And every day you help remind people of their power. It's not a Malcolm. What is Malcolm going to do? Malcolm is just a part of this team. What is this team going to do? Teams win. Individuals can get the shine, but teams are how we win.
You better say that.
Introducing a new podcast. Karen Hunter is awesome.
If you like me on SiriusXM Urban View Channel 126, you're gonna love me. And Karen Hunter is awesome. Hey, this is Karen Hunter, host of the Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM's Urban View. Karen Hunter is awesome is an actual podcast to bring heat and energy and knowledge and power. A 1-2 punch that I don't think you get anyplace else. Tell the truth. So check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You will not be disappointed.
Karen Hunter is awesome. A new podcast from Karen Hunter.